Welcome to your Mac Life for Wednesday, June the 22nd, 2016, show number 1097. I'm your host, Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening or in the archive if that's how you so choose to enjoy this particular broadcast. Thank you guys very much for joining me. On tonight's show, we're going to have Jim Dalrymple back. Jim is feeling better. He and his son got a little touch of food poisoning last week, unfortunately. The poor guy. It's a terrible time to do it. His son goes from Nova Scotia to San Francisco to get sick and stay in a hotel room for 3 or 4 days. That's got to suck. But they're both feeling better now, and Jim will be on the show tonight. We'll be talking about his impressions of WWDC. He's got a post up on The Loop at loopinsight.com with his first impressions of macOS Sierra. Now, it's not a review. Anybody who is reviewing macOS Sierra is a freaking moron. We've already seen people complaining about Sierra. It's a developer preview. It's not even a beta yet. And these asshats are already complaining and trying to review it. Don't. Ignore those people. There are no logical reviews of macOS Sierra. Now, there are things that people are discovering and using and finding out. One guy from Wired Magazine was complaining how he's been yelling at Siri all the past week. Well, it's developer preview, asshat. So we'll talk to Jim about that. We'll also talk to Jim about this story. I ride a motorcycle. You guys know I ride a motorcycle. Now, I'm a fairly new rider. I've had my license for 10 years now. I've only been riding for about 6 of those 10 years. So I know nothing about mechanical things in general. I know nothing about cars or motorcycle engine-wise. I know what I like. I know what I think looks good. I know the way I ride, that kind of stuff. But I don't know anything about the actual mechanical bits that I'm sitting on top of. There's been this discussion in the motorcycling community for the last 10 years with regards to ABS, something that on cars seems fairly common and usually uncontroversial. ABS, automatic braking systems. And what ABS does, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, is it prevents your tires on a bike or on a car from skidding. When tires are skidding, you have no steering controls. So instead of the tires skidding, you jam the brakes on, and the computers in the car, the sensors in your tires, just before the tire is about to lock up, it releases it. So if you ever jammed on your ABS, you'll feel your car shuddering. Same thing happens in a motorcycle. A lot of the old school guys, motorcycle guys, hate ABS. Even though it's been proven many, many times that a rider can stop faster with ABS than he can without ABS on dry pavement. It's a whole different thing with wet or gravel or that kind of stuff. But these guys hate ABS. It's demonstrably better than non-ABS. It allows you more control than non-ABS. It prevents skidding, unlike non-ABS. And it's generally a good thing to give the driver or the rider more control. Yet these old-timers still hate ABS. It feels the same way as people are talking about the headphone jack on the iPhone. There's this big kerfuffle over the last couple of days, started by Nilay Patel over at The Verge, and the flames were stoked by John Gruber, Daring Fireball, about whether or not Apple should or shouldn't remove the headphone jack from the iPhone. Yes, it's going to be annoying. We're talking to Jim about this. We're going to talk to Jim about this. But for the most part, and a lot of folks are using the analogy of floppy drives and this other kind of stuff. I don't want to get into those kinds of discussions. One of the things I think of is there's either a reason Apple is doing this or there isn't. Okay? Let's assume there is. I don't think Apple is doing this simply for the sake of changing the technology, for the sake of changing the technology. I think Apple is doing this for a good reason. It's a reason many of us don't know. It's a reason why many of us can't think about, can't conceptualize. Apple's known for doing things that we average people had never thought of. Someone accused me of magical thinking when I said that we don't know why Apple's doing this. And I don't think it's magical thinking. I think it's understanding the history of Apple and their smarts in doing things that I, quite frankly, admit I'm not smart enough to figure out or see into the future. Maybe these guys who are criticizing me are. That's fair. But for me, it seems that Apple would have thought this out and will either force the user, that's the way you want to look at it, or encourage the user to deal with short-term pain for long-term gain. And what that long-term gain is, I don't know. I don't know if it's better battery life. I don't know if it's waterproofing. I don't know if it's better audio quality or something else down the line. I don't know. So therefore, I'm willing to wait for Apple to tell us why they are going to do this, if in fact they're going to do this. Not many other people are, though. It seems like a lot of other folks are just like, nah, nah. And there's this whole small minor movement among nerds I've seen on Reddit and other places. If Apple loves this, I'll never buy another iPhone. Okay, don't. Apple's not forcing you to buy the next version of the iPhone. If you've got equipment that plugs into that iPhone headphone port now, and you don't want to replace that equipment, don't. No one's telling you you have to run out when Apple announces the iPhone 7 and replace your previous versions of the iPhone and buy new headphones. No one says you have to do that. So, wait. I think the discussion is really interesting. I think the not the facts of the discussion, but the fact that we're having the discussion and the viewpoints of the people involved. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too. As always, on air at yourmaclifeshow.com. Do you think it's a good idea? Let's assume Apple's going to do it. That they're going to remove the headphone jack from your iPhone and logically assume it's going to also be removed from your other devices too, the iPad and the MacBooks and the desktops and all that other kind of stuff. Assume that it means that you're going to have to buy new headphones. The headphones I have here won't work. You have to buy either an adapter or new headphones. Do you care? Does it matter to you? Do you think it'll make a difference? I don't know any of the ins and outs of audio quality or that kind of stuff. I've heard from many folks that Bluetooth audio quality is not as good as wired audio quality, which makes sense to me. Wireless audio quality is not as good as wired audio quality. It's always been true. But at least I'm willing to give Apple the benefit of the doubt, because the vast majority of the time they've done this stuff to us, it's eventually been a good thing. Removing SCSI. God, that was a great thing for those folks who remember SCSI. ADB, great. VGA ports, fantastic. All the other legacy things that people had to fight with, that Apple has dragged the industry into the future. This could be another one of those examples. And the other things have been good. Very few people would want to go back to the days of SCSI. Very few people would want to go back to the days of ADB or serial ports or all that other kind of stuff. And now, granted, Apple's made mistakes. FireWire might be described as a mistake by Apple because they removed or they added this functionality that never really caught on widespread. But they've done the right thing more often than they've done the wrong thing. So therefore, I'm willing to accept the fact that they know more about this stuff than I do, that they have a plan going forward, and that plan will eventually be a good plan. That's what I believe. Now, I'll agree with those folks when it's going to be. I completely accept the fact that it's going to be a pain in the butt to replace that connection. That connection is ubiquitous. These headphones, they're all wrapped up in, well, so much for that. Come on. Anyway, these headphones work on any device that has this 3/8 of an inch port. This works on every MP3 player out there. It works on every phone out there. It works on every recording device, everything. This is an industry standard and has been for like 100 years. There's nothing from a consumer point of view that's wrong with this. Maybe there's something wrong from an Apple point of view, but for consumers, that thing is great. That works. I hate the Apple earbuds. Hate them. So when I get a new iPhone, I can go down to Best Buy and buy whatever headphones I want that feel comfortable for me, that fit my ears, that fit my style. You can buy headphones that have extra bass boost on them. You can buy noise-canceling ones. You can buy noise-attenuating ones. Anything you like. That changes the day you buy an iPhone that doesn't have that common port. And that's going to be annoying. MacMan says it's stupid because unless they make it waterproof, the only reason they'd remove it is because of Apple's insane fetish to save a billionth of a millimeter off the next version of a product. Perhaps. I don't believe that's the only reason, though, MacMan. I believe that Apple has another reason. They just haven't told it to us, and we haven't thought it up. And again, that may be magical thinking on my part, but Apple's proved over time that they generally do the right thing for the consumer. This won't be the right thing for audio nerds. It won't be the right thing for those folks who don't want to go out and buy new stuff. But for Apple's average customer, Apple believes that this is going to be the right thing. And I'll cut them some slack for that. Licensing fees for lightning connectors on headphones. Yeah, okay. If you assume Apple's going to continue the licensing fee, that's a fair assumption. But it's also possible Apple will either lower the licensing fee or get rid of it entirely. It's possible. We don't know. There's no less magical thinking that Apple's going to have the Lightning connector, the MiFi certified is what it's called, going forward as it has been in the past. They could change that. So it's just one of those things that, yes, we can be upset by it, but let's not go off the deep end until, frankly, we have a reason to. Until we know Apple's doing this, and until we know how it affects the iPhone, and then when we know how it's going to affect us individually. I think that's the key. Patience, Grasshopper. So we'll talk to him about that. We'll talk to him about macOS Sierra. I said that. WWDC. Okay. And then on the starting point photography segment, we're going to talk about visualizing your photos. Ooh, visualizing your photos. This, to me, is a real important detail when it comes to taking better pictures. It's something I practiced a lot of, and I teach my students this technique of what to do before you push the shutter button. So we'll talk about that and much, much more coming up later on. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back to Your Mac Life. This is, I am Shawn King. And on our phone, we've got our good friend, Jim Downpool of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
Doing good, Shawn. How are you?
I am good. So I'm so sorry to hear that you weren't feeling well at WWDC last week. That's really bad timing.
Really bad timing.
Is it bad sushi?
No sushi for me, but sadly, bad Denny's.
Oh, dude, and you love Denny's.
Well, you know, it was we were coming home from the party, and my son and I went in and had, you know, just a normal meal, like, you know, bacon and eggs and toast, and we were both just, I was up all night.
Oh,
it was just awful. And then Tuesday, I did have to get up because I had a couple of meetings with Apple, and I barely made those meetings, and I went straight back as soon as they were over. There were no questions, no nothing. I went right back to the hotel, and laid down, and you know, I was basically in bed until Thursday.
Oh, geez, that sucks.
So Mike was he was better. Probably Tuesday night he was doing better, but I was still down on Wednesday.
That's a shame too, because I saw a lot of tweets about the Beard Bash. It sounded like it was a huge success. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a good time.
Good to hear. So now that we've got a week beyond the WWDC keynote last Monday, give us your overall impressions of the keynote. It was really interesting reading the online commentary, only because it seemed like it was almost, I won't say 50-50 split, but a lot of folks thought it was boring, but a lot of folks thought it was one of the best they'd done in a long time. What were your thoughts?
I think they did a really good job overall.
Yeah.
You know, as I said in my overview piece of WWDC, for me, when Apple focuses on the little things that can make a difference in our everyday lives, they excel as a company. Yeah. And I think that's what they did. Like, you know, auto unlock of your Mac from your authenticated Apple Watch. You know, you have your Apple Watch on your wrist, you walk up to your Mac, and it logs you in automatically.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that is that's brilliant. You know, when Apple comes up with things like Spaces, you know, I don't really care. You know, that wasn't a big feature for me, but it's these little things that they do that really makes me excited about what they're doing, because they're using, you know, 2 different OSs there, and a lot of technology in the background to get it done, and they just make it seem so easy. And to me, that's what it's all about for them.
Folks, you can go to loopinsight.com, and Jim has his WWDC post up, along with a post on macOS Sierra, which we'll talk about in a little bit. You got to tell me about, where were you in the crowd? It seemed like from your pictures you were kind of like in the middle.
I was towards the back of the front.
Okay,
yeah.
So basically, you were surrounded by the typical nerds of a WWDC.
Uh-huh.
What was the reaction to Bozema St. John from the guys around you?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. What song did she play? Rapper's Delight?
Rapper's Delight, baby.
Yeah. No, you know, that whole part was really good. I mean, you know, there's not a single person in that audience that knew how to dance.
That's right.
Not a single person could dance.
Yeah.
But you know, she did a good job. I'll be honest, I'm not convinced with the new Apple Music interface.
Yeah.
I think it's like a half-loaded web page to me.
Did you find it interesting that Tim Cook came on at the beginning and at the end, and nowhere in the middle?
Not at all.
Really? You didn't think that was worthy of note?
No. If it was a special event, then maybe.
Yeah.
But this isn't a special event. This is for developers. And Tim we'll talk about the company, and we'll talk about, where they're at, where they're going, products, stuff like that. But when it comes to developer stuff like that, he leaves that to the people who know.
Yep.
Craig obviously did quite a big talk in there, but that's all developer stuff. Eddie was up for Apple Music and News, and there's another app that I don't get. I don't get news.
Yeah.
As I said in the story, it's a solution looking for a problem, and I don't think that Apple really knows what problem it is they're trying to fix.
Yeah. I still remember when thinking about that from the very beginning when Apple announced news last year. I was thinking the exact same thing. Is like, what solution are you trying to give us here? Why are you getting in the quote unquote the news business? They're not really, but that's the way it feels. There was absolutely no need for Apple to do this. It seems like it's the only reason to do it was to serve advertising. They weren't doing it as a way to help users get more news. It seemed to be a way to present more ads to us.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I wish I knew what the end game was with news, but I don't know what it is. I can't for the life of me figure it out. And now they're adding subscriptions to news. Well, they did that with Newsstand, but I don't know that subscriptions will be any better in news than what it was in Newsstand, and they abandoned Newsstand.
Yeah.
So I'm at a complete loss of what it is they're trying to accomplish with that.
And I think from a publisher point of view, too, a lot of folks, I'm sure yourself included, are going to be a little gun-shy after the Newsstand debacle. There's like, I'm not jumping into this another news thing from Apple to have them pull the rug out from underneath my feet again.
I'm not jumping into anything to do with news that Apple ever does.
Yep, I agree. During the keynote, the only thing that really excited me during the keynote, I like seeing the new bits and bobs of the macOS and tvOS and those kind of things. The Swift Playground thing seemed really cool, and I have no interest in learning how to code whatsoever, but it was one of those things where I could see where Apple was going with this and why they were doing it. It was real obvious as soon as they started talking about it why Swift Playground could be a big deal. Did you agree in your conversations with folks the week afterwards?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Swift Playground is going to be a big thing.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that you say, oh, yeah, of course.
I'm dying to play around with it. And I like I said, I've got no coding experience whatsoever. I've never wanted to code. I don't think kids should be forced to code, as Tim Cook thinks. But it looks like it's really fun, if nothing else, in an interesting way to get kids, and certainly adults like me, into the basics of coding things. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to create a full-blown app using Swift Playground, but I think it's going to be a real big help to folks who, no matter what their age, are at least interested in the foundations of coding.
Well, I guarantee you, if you put a 6-year-old and me with Playground, they would kick my ass.
That's right. Me too. Me too. It's just something I mentioned it. Let's talk a little bit about it. Cook said on stage that he believes all kids should learn to code. And we've talked about it on last week's show, too. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think every kid should learn how to code?
Well, we're in a situation now where, before, in our time, we had a typing class.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And I think that there was a thought, and certainly boys and girls in my high school took the typing class. It was an elective at that point. You didn't have to, but a lot did. And I think that was a good thing. Then we had computer classes, but they were just how to use a computer. Yes. Again, I think it's a good thing. So maybe we've come to that point now where, computer science and coding is so prevalent that it is a good idea for kids to have, even if they don't follow it through, they have a rudimentary knowledge of how things work. Yeah. Just like you used to take courses in high school and they would teach you Excel.
Yeah.
So when you go to university or you go to a job, yeah, I've used it. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. There's going to be people that don't follow through and go into coding. I don't think that the goal is to have everybody code. I think the goal is to have that option available to everybody, so that you don't have to take expensive courses outside of your school curriculum to be able to do it. So I do think that it's a good idea that that's part of school for kids. If they don't want to do it, then that's great.
I like the idea of it being an elective. I think that's what it should be for those kids who are interested. One of the problems is folks seem to think that this is an easy thing to do. Just replace one thing with coding. Well, you need teachers for this stuff. You need money for this stuff. Schools are already stretched to the bare minimum. They're already removing music classes and gym classes and art classes from so many lower income schools, shall we say. I don't think that you're going to be able to do this in every school. And if you can't do it in every school, it's not fair for the rich kids to have it in their school and the poor kids to not have it in their school. I realize it's a Pollyanna attitude, because there's lots of things in rich kid schools that the poor kids don't have. But this is just one more thing. I think as an elective, great. Yeah, let's make some resources available for kids. But yeah, I don't think every kid should learn the code the way we learn math and the way we learn geography and English and those sorts of things.
Well, I think that for a lot of people, coding is becoming the math and geography, and I agree wholeheartedly. I was always with my kids. I was very upset with the curriculum at schools, because I always thought that reading, writing, arithmetic, the 3 R's. You get in there, you learn all of the basic stuff, and when they start learning this crazy stuff, it just annoyed me, because I thought that they should learn the basics. But maybe this is becoming one of the basics. Maybe it's not an elective anymore. Maybe it's something that you need to do.
I don't know. I would disagree with that, because you said a lot of people are learning to code. It's still a very, very, very tiny minority of the people who are in school nowadays. I'll throw a number out there and say it's less than 10%, probably closer to 1%. That's not a lot of people.
Maybe that's because it isn't available to everybody.
Fair point. Yep.
Look at what happens with Gene McDonald stuff and the app camp for girls. Yep. You can say, well, maybe girls just aren't interested in coding. Well, clearly that's not true.
Right, that's right.
Because Gene, has these programs, and girls show up and they want to do it. Yep. So clearly there's a missing piece there somewhere, and maybe that same missing piece is not just for girls, but for all kids.
True.
So I don't know what the right answer is in a situation like this, but I think it's worth making that available to them.
Let's take a look at your first look, macOS Sierra. Now, this is not a review. I made that very clear off the top of the show. Anyone who's reviewing macOS Sierra is a frickin' moron. Anyone complaining that it breaks things is a moron. Yeah. That being said, there is a lot of interesting things in macOS Sierra. The first thing I want to know from you is, this is the developer preview given to you by Apple. How stable is it?
Extremely.
Yeah.
Extremely stable. Yeah, very stable build. And to be clear, as you said, if anybody decides to install this, you're doing it at your own risk.
Absolutely.
The build that I have is stable. The next build that they release when they update it could be a hunk of crap.
That's right. Exactly.
You just don't know. Yeah. And that's the thing with these betas. You have to be very careful. And I do not have the iOS beta installed on my regular phone.
Yeah.
And I won't for probably 3 to 4 more releases.
Yeah.
Because there are things that just don't work. I have it installed on another device, but there are things on that device that just don't work. So and that's normal, and you have to expect that.
Yep.
But this build of OS 10 is very stable. I mean, I haven't had anything crash on it in the time that I've been using it. So.
Well, that's certainly good to hear, because that's always my first concern is, these are, you should never install these things on work machines to begin with, but even if it's a beta development machine, you still want it to be up and running and working. Let's talk about some of the feature sets. Now, I got to assume from our discussions in the past, Siri in the Macintosh is not going to be that big a deal for you. That being said, did you at least try it out in macOS Sierra?
Oh, yeah. I tried it out, and, it did some things and didn't do others, and what you would expect from a beta, I guess.
Yeah.
The problem that I have, and maybe some of the listeners will have the same problem, the problem that I have is that I'm so quick using Spotlight that I actually did this as a test in opening an app. I just said, open iTunes, or I used the spacebar, the command spacebar, and started typing in iTunes like I normally would, and then hit the enter key, and I can do it like 5 times faster.
Yeah, that's right.
So the problem with Siri on the Mac in doing the things that you may want to do is that you can probably already do them very quickly as it is. Now, there are and I'm taking a leap here, that there probably are complex statements that you can do with Siri that would find files faster than what I could find them. Show me files that Shawn sent me in the last month that are PDFs that I edited, or something crazy.
Yep.
I'm sure that Siri could do that much quicker than what I could go in and search for a document. Yeah. And in those types of situations, I think Siri's going to be great. I would probably use Siri for a lot of the same things that I use Siri for on the iOS devices, like, what's the hockey schedule tonight? Yeah. And then let it bring up the NHL schedule for me, or, who won the game last night, or, something like that, where I would have to search on Google, and that would actually take longer than to just let Siri get it for me, and then I'll go do some other things, heard about it. So, like Siri on iOS, for the watch, for TV, we're all going to use it differently.
Yeah.
And, when it comes time that, as Siri does come on the Mac for everybody, it's going to be the same thing as it was on OS. Well, I use it like this, and, I open apps with it, and I check scores, and I search things, and, it's going to be different. It's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of it for me is going to be breaking habits, if I decide to break those habits.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can do things, when you go to Siri on the Mac and say, open iTunes, very quick command.
Yeah.
But then Siri says, gives you feedback and says, okay, opening iTunes. And then it opens the app. I can blow that away.
Yeah.
Just by typing.
But doing something like find me all the files on my Macintosh external hard drive that are larger than 100 megabytes that are all JPEGs. Yeah, that I can't do in Siri in Spotlight.
Right. So that's a lot different. It's a different type of query, and there are people, that will have those types of queries, or do have those types of queries right now, that Siri will be able to help with, and it'll be great.
You mentioned both in your previous piece and in your macOS Sierra piece that you really like the auto unlock for Apple Watch users, which kind of pissed me off because I ain't got an Apple Watch. I got an iPhone. Why won't that work with the iPhone?
Well, too bad for you.
Now, what about auto locking? To me, it would seem to go hand in hand. I don't know if you've talked to anyone at Apple. I haven't seen anyone talking about this. Well, but to me, it would make as much sense for it to lock when you walk away as it would to unlock when you get closer.
But it does lock when you go away. It's just timed.
No, what I'm saying is
It's always done. I know what you're saying.
Auto unlock.
Yeah, I know what you're
Auto
saying.
lock. It seems
Auto lock.
It seems to be a cutesy feature, but you actually found it to be actually useful.
You know, for me, I will get up and my computer will lock multiple times a day.
Yeah.
And for me to just be able to go walk up to the computer and have it unlocked, that's a huge feature.
Why do you have it locked? You're sitting under the bridge. Are the other guys around the bridge wanting to get at your computer?
Well, Bob's a criminal.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
And he's next door.
He's in the next cardboard box.
He's in the next cardboard box. So let's be clear. I mean, he's not in the cardboard box because he's a nice guy, So.
No, I know.
And I'm stealing his Wi-Fi. So
No, I know. Even though you're a fairly bad photographer, you still take a lot of photos. Did you find the new features in Photos to be useful?
Actually, I was so impressed with the search. With Photos now takes it can identify scenes inside of pictures and different things. So if you search for like flowers or trees or beach or guitar, any of these types of things, it will bring up pictures that in your library that have these things in it, even if it's not the focus of the picture.
And to be clear, folks, these are not keyworded photos. These are not photos where you've added those words to it.
No.
This is photo recognition. Again, not facial recognition, but photo recognition from Apple. I think it's pretty remarkable.
It's scene and object recognition.
Yeah.
And it is remarkable.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I'm going to do some more refined search. Like, if you take a picture of a fruit bowl and I search for apple, will it bring that up?
Yeah.
What if I search for an orange? Will it bring that up? And then bring up other pictures of apples and oranges.
Yep.
I don't know if I've ever taken any, but let's assume I have. That's the type of stuff that's coming up in that search. Yep. It's just
and how fast is it? Even under the
it's immediate.
Yeah,
it's immediate. There is no wait.
Interesting.
You just type it in, and there they are. So so those are categories.
Yeah.
So you can search for people, but you can search, and when you type in like Apple, it brings up. It says underneath category, and then tells you how many pictures are in that category that you have. I wonder if it would bring up like the Apple logo along with apples.
It would have to, wouldn't it?
That would be cool. I don't know. I'm going to try that.
It would have to bring up every representation of that word. The other thing I'm curious about is, would it work on? I'm assuming it's working on everything in your Photos library. Does Photos recognize PDFs? Does it recognize GIFs? Does it recognize MOV files? Because then would it be able to search inside of those things too?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have the Sierra developer preview, and I won't touch it until it becomes available. But it's something I would be interested to know. The other thing is, and see if you can do this for me as a favor, does it search for colors? So in other words, if you said red, would it show you all the photos with a red thing in it or a red color cast to them? That's something else I'd be curious about.
That's interesting.
Yeah, give that a try.
Now you're just being freaky.
I know. One of the things that they showed off at the keynote that had to be, besides Bosma St. John, this had to be the single most age-defining moment of the keynote, when they started showing off iMessage. When they started showing off the new messages and the emojis and the stickers and the things, and us old farts went, no, waving our hands in the air, going, we don't want that. Now, what are your reactions to it, both from a Jim Dalrymple point of view, but also seeing the big picture of why Apple is doing this with messages?
Well, I think it was a damn good thing for them to do. I mean, they obviously focused a lot of attention on messages
Yep.
across OSs, because when I look at my usage, Messages is one of my most used apps.
Sure, me too. Yeah.
You know, the problem that I have with Messages is that I can't see the emojis. So somebody could be sending me, you know, a sad face, and I write back and say, "Oh, good to hear." You know?
That's right.
I don't know. I don't know what they're sending, so I can't see them anymore. Now they're 5 times bigger.
Yeah.
You know, I can see everything. So now I have to go back through my messages and apologize to everybody. Oh, wow.
Do you think that's going to be a cutesy feature, or do you think it's going to be actually useful? These new graphics.
Okay, there's some things that are going to be cutesy, like having confetti on the screen. If you send me too much confetti on my screen, I'm gonna block you.
Yep, that's right. Me too.
But the features of, you know, adding a little balloon to a post, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, because then you're not doing anything specific. You know, you're not blowing up my screen or anything. Yeah. I know that people are going to do that, and you know, they can do it once or twice, and then that's it.
Exactly. That's right.
I'm good. I'm good.
I'll give you 2 warnings to stop doing that. I'm telling you right now, you got 2 shots of doing it. Then, unless I'm sleeping with you, otherwise, no, you get 2 warnings.
Yeah, and it better be something to do with sleeping with you too.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, there are some other things like the invisible ink.
Yep.
You know, those types of things. Those are advancements in Messages. And let's face it, if it's the most used app for me, imagine what the kids are doing. Yep. You know, I mean, it's the most used app for them by far, probably. So I think it was a good thing. I think the things that they put in there were really good.
The other one of the things I really liked was the iCloud desktop idea, where the things that are on your desktop are also available on all your other devices too. Now, again, us old timers, we remember the days of, no, don't put things in your desktop, put them away kind of stuff. Now everyone's just going to dump everything on their desktop. But I think overall, that if it works out the way it's planned, and you tell me if it does in the developer preview, does it actually work in macOS Sierra? And
very fast.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, very fast. I actually threw some files in Documents with the iCloud window open to see how fast it would upload, or if there was some kind of 5-minute delay, or it just started uploading them right away. So that was pretty good. And on my iOS device, they were there immediately. Yeah. You know, there was no delay there either. It says desktop and Documents.
Yeah.
And, you know, you go in and there they are. They're the files. So, and I was away from my computer too when I checked. I wasn't on the same network. Yeah. Not that would matter with this type of feature, but it wasn't immediate just because I was there.
Are there any restrictions on the size of those files? I mean, can I drop
No, I don't think so.
Can you drop a movie on your desktop and then watch that movie on your iPhone?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any restrictions, but it is going to be restricted by the amount of space you have on iCloud.
That's why I was asking that, because I got to believe that means that Apple's going to up the minimum amount of iCloud, the free iCloud people get. Right now, I know 50 gigs is dirt cheap at like $2 a month, so go ahead and get that. But I think that Apple will upgrade your free iCloud storage.
Yeah. I mean, you know, that's something, and I did put that in the review, that, you know, be careful. It's a great feature, and I love having access to all of my documents and my desktop files. And to be clear, if you have 2 Sierra computers running with this feature turned on, the desktops will be mirrored.
Yes.
So if you have a MacBook and you drop a file on the desktop, when you look on your iMac, it'll be on that desktop as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So they're going to be mirrored, but on iOS devices, those files will be listed in the iCloud drive. So
I think the biggest stealth announcement that people haven't been paying much attention to, that's going to be very, very, very important in a year to 2 years' time, is Apple Pay on the web.
Yeah.
I don't think people really understand how far that's going to go. At some point within the next, I would predict 6 months to a year, you are going to be able to send me money via Apple Pay through iMessages and Apple Pay from your watch. You'll be able to type in send Shawn $5, and it will not be a PayPal killer, but just like iMessage put the screws to text messaging on your phone, I think Apple Pay and the web will put the screws to PayPal.
Well, they could very well do that. I think it's a very interesting thing. I do. I mean, obviously, it's being picked up everywhere.
Mosquito says being able to make payments that way would certainly help me get away from PayPal, which is good. Exactly. I think it'll be really, really easy for folks to pick a thing. And I'm not just saying for myself as someone who begs for money from the audience on a regular basis, but for anybody who wants to pay either peer-to-peer or using eBay or Amazon or any of that kind of stuff. You'll be able to cut out that middleman and send the money directly into someone's bank account, or Apple becomes a bank, and you'll just give it to the Apple bank, and then you'll withdraw it from the Apple bank. Very much like PayPal is a bank. That money is going to PayPal, and they're holding on to it, and then I withdraw it or give it to other people.
But this is different, though.
Yep.
This isn't like that.
No, I think it's going to be like that, though, is what I'm saying. No, you're right. It's not that way now. Right now, what it's going to be is buying services via Apple Pay. But I think in the future, it's going to be a peer-to-peer, send money back and forth, small business type transactions.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think so. I think Apple's moving towards that. Let's move on to the great headphone kerfuffle of 2016, 16. We've talked about this before. This rumor has come up for at least the last 6 months. We've said yay or nay to this. What are your thoughts on this latest thing between Nilay and John Gruber? Are you falling either one side or the other?
I think it's an inevitable thing.
Sure.
It's going to happen.
Yep.
And it's going to happen because it always happens.
Yes. And
should we be prepared? Yes. Should we be worried? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm not that worried about it. I could care less, because I think that there's always there will be a way, at least a transitional way, to plug in.
Do you feel for those folks who, I don't want to say complain, but who say that, it means I'm going to have to buy new peripherals, I have to buy new headphones or new adapters or this kind of stuff? To me, that doesn't seem to fly real well, if only because this is something we've done as iPhone users, as Mac users, over and over and over again. This is not a new problem we've had.
No, it's not new at all. These are things that have come up over the years, and I know people keep talking about Apple getting rid of the floppy and bringing in USB and all the different things, FireWire, and they've done a lot of this over the years. Apple is not doing this so that they can sell adapters.
Yes.
That's not why it's being done. So, if it happens, or when it happens, then it happens. You move on.
Do you think Apple's doing this for reasons other than what people are assuming, waterproofing, extra battery life? Do you think there's a third, fourth, or fifth reason for Apple doing this that we just don't know about?
Well, maybe there's better connectors that they can get for audio. Yeah. There's Apple's reasonings for doing things. Why did they make the Apple Music interface look like a half-loaded web page? I don't know.
Yeah.
But, maybe the things that they're going to do with with the headphone jack. Maybe it's not coming in this version. Who knows?
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Is that all of this may be for nothing. I think it is coming. I think, like you said, it is inevitable. I don't think Apple's changing it for the sake of changing it. Just some people have said, well, it's 100-year-old technology. Apple isn't going to change it for that. I don't think it's just for waterproofing. I think that'd be silly. I don't think it's just for that few millimeters of thinness or extra battery life. I think it's for another, at least from Apple's point of view, another good reason, one we just don't know right now. And as you said, if it's inevitable, there's not a lot all this bitching and whining and complaining about it, especially those folks who are saying, well, if Apple does this, I'll never buy another iPhone. Well, good for you. Don't. It just seems that the tech media is, I don't like this, therefore you shouldn't like it, kind of attitude. As opposed to telling people, go ahead.
People could say that about my views on Apple Music too.
True.
You know,
yeah, true.
I mean, clearly, Apple Music is growing because they now have 15 million subscribers. But I feel that, you know, I have a responsibility to say what I feel.
Yep, true.
And I don't like it. So, you know, there you go.
But in response to that, I would say you don't like it for good reasons. You don't like it because it has affected you directly. You don't like it because of concrete things you can point to. Not liking a mythical port simply because you don't like it, you've never used it, you've never seen it, you don't know if it's true. To me, that seems ridiculous. In a year's time, if Nilay had written the exact same post, just written it in the present tense, I wouldn't have had so much of a problem with it. But he's writing about something he doesn't know a damn thing about.
It's true.
Someone wrote on The Loop, I think this was the best piece I read about this, where the person said, I'm using a wireless mouse. I'm using a wireless network. My home landline is a wireless phone. My smoke detectors are wireless. I send music to my car wirelessly. I get my books wirelessly. I transfer photos from my camera wirelessly. I pay for my goods wirelessly. But by Jiminy, if Apple gets rid of those little tangly wires going to my headphones, that'll be an outrage.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it, isn't it?
Yep.
We get so focused on these little distractions that we forget the bigger picture, that the world is going wireless.
Yeah. I would love to have a set of wireless headphones that actually sounded good.
Yeah. I think that's part of the issue too, yeah.
You know, if what Apple is going to do is get rid of the headphone port and come out with like this incredible set of wireless headphones, I'm there.
Yep.
I'm there. Bring it on.
The argument against that is folks will say, well, no other company has come out with great wireless headphones. That doesn't mean Apple can't or won't. It's just that in the past, we've always said wired is better quality than wireless when it comes to this kind of stuff. So we'll see. And maybe we won't see. Maybe it won't happen in October or September. Something that will happen, I think, is very, very interesting, is a story that's very political. Tim Cook is going to host Tim Cook is going to host a Paul Ryan fundraiser, even though Apple has said they will not be giving money or services or assistance to the Republican National Convention as they have in the past, and as I'm sure they will with the Democrats. Apple hasn't said why, but we're all going to assume it's because of Trump in general, and in particular the things he said about the various communities and about Apple. Tim Cook turns around, not Apple, but Tim Cook turns around and is personally hosting a fundraiser for Paul Ryan, the Republican Speaker of the House. What are your thoughts on this? Is this wrong, right, weird?
You want my honest thoughts?
Yes.
I don't care.
Oh, come on, man.
No, I really don't.
You don't think this is important? You don't think this is interesting? You don't think this is curious?
I think it's interesting, but it also makes sense. You know, Paul Ryan is basically the head of the Republican Party.
Yes. For now.
So there's no reason that Apple can't support Ryan the same way that they support the Democratic Party and continue on. Obviously, Apple has some specific issues with the candidate, and they will not support him. I think that's fair. I could care less. support somebody, don't support somebody, whatever.
I think the most interesting thing I read about this, and it was quite an odd statement. Mitchell Sternbach on Twitter said, "I love Apple, but heartbroken about the Ryan Association. How can I defend this to people?" And I wrote back to him, "Why do you have to defend it to anybody?
Yeah.
This is for Tim Cook to defend, not for you to defend. If you're getting in these arguments with people." I think the first part of his statement is the problem. I love Apple. No, dude, you shouldn't love Apple. It's just a corporation. You shouldn't. There's no need for you to defend this. All you have to do is, someone says, "Why does Tim Cook do this?" You say, send him an email to timcook@apple.com. I don't know. Don't feel like you have to defend Tim Cook on this.
No, you don't have to defend anybody. And the fact is, if you feel that if somebody is making you feel like you have to defend Apple, then they must have to defend Google or Facebook or whoever else, because they all do it.
Yep, that's right.
So
yeah, I thought the story was more of an interesting kind of thing as to why Cook was doing this. I like your logic of they can support the party, and by the way, Apple and every other company, Google, Microsoft, and all the companies that give support, both financial and technical, to these conventions, they do it for a reason. I've spoken to a couple of the worker bees I know at Apple who put on these kinds of huge events. Apple and other companies use this as a test bed. They use it as a way to test their equipment, to torture test their servers, to test new audio cables, to test. They're not doing it because they have a direct need or want to support the party and their policies and their people and those kinds of things. It's very common in America for companies to support both sides. A, so they don't look like they're being partisan, but B, also because it's just a smart thing to do. I mean, if you watch any political show in the last 10 years, you understand this. But from Apple, from a technical point of view, one of the reasons why they do this, according to one of the worker bees, is it gives them a chance to, one of the things he said, it helps us test load in and load out. In other words, how fast can we get set up for a gig and how fast can we break down a gig.
Yes.
And so that from their point of view, they like doing these kinds of things because they get to test out their equipment. It may be a different reason for the VP of whatever, but for the worker bees, that's why they like doing these kind of things. So I saw something really interesting last week, and give me your thoughts on it. We hear a lot of folks talking about how Apple needs to create an Amazon Echo competitor. Amazon needs to get this device out there. What if Apple's already done that? And it's called the iPad. What if the next version of the iPad is actually an Echo competitor? Apple's not going to build their own little round, cube, square box that you talk to. They're just going to sell you another iPad. And the iPad becomes Apple's Amazon Echo. I think that makes sense. I think that's why Apple is doing some of the things they're doing with the desktop. Remember, everything Apple does is connected to everything else Apple does. So if I can have my iPad act like a Amazon Echo with a better quality Siri, with better microphones, with access to my desktop anywhere in the house, with the ability to send and move files around, those are things that the Amazon Echo can't do. The Echo is kind of a dumb microphone, if you want to look at it that way, or a dumb terminal. I think Apple's Echo competitor is already on the market, and it's called the iPad.
Interesting thought.
I think so. I think it would solve a lot of Apple's problems. It would jumpstart iPad sales, in theory. It would allow Apple to immediately get a product on the market to compete. And I don't necessarily think that Apple needs to compete with Amazon, because until Amazon gives actual numbers of sales for the Echo, I don't believe anything anyone says about the success of the Amazon Echo. Right now, it's a geek toy. Average people don't use or buy the Echo. It's not. I've never seen it in anyone's house who's not a nerd. So I don't believe for a second that it's some sort of hugely successful device like an iPad or an iPhone or anything along those lines. But I think if Apple needs or wants to compete with the Echo, I think they do it through the iPad, not a separate device.
I don't know.
I
don't know. I don't know that Apple would. I mean, maybe maybe people have said the Apple TV. Maybe it's the iPad. I don't know.
Well, the knock on the Apple TV is the fact that it doesn't travel with you. It doesn't leave being connected to your television set. It doesn't go into the bathroom. It doesn't go into the kitchen. It doesn't go into the bedroom.
Yeah, but neither does Alexa.
Oh, that's not true. I know the nerds I know will carry it around with them from room to room.
That's just not gonna. That's silly. I don't even want to. I don't want to know that. I don't want to know any of this.
Folks, I've been talking to Jim Dalrymple, a finally healthy Jim Dalrymple. He's available on loopinsight.com, and he got his own podcast up on the iTunes Music Store. Thanks for joining me, Jim. I appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks a lot, Shawn.
All right, talk to you next week. See ya.
Bye.
Bye. I don't know. I think that's where it's going to go. I think that's where Apple's going to go with. If Apple feels they need to have a Echo competitor, they've already got one. It can and will be the iPad. Just my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Send us emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com if you want to talk about it live on tonight's show or anytime during the week. onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. In our starting point photography segment on tonight's show, one of the things I always teach folks in my classes is this idea of visualization. If you are a fan of movies, especially behind-the-scenes stuff like I am, you may have heard of this thing called previs. You can actually see it in the credits of a lot of movies, especially action movies, that you watch. Pre-visualization. What that is either a computer or drawing artist will draw out the scenes of a movie before the director actually films it. So they're pre-visualizing. They're seeing ahead of time what it's going to look like. What it does is it helps the director work on camera angles, low, high. It helps special effects folks know where the explosion's supposed to be. It helps costumers know what kind of clothes people are supposed to wear. Set designers know where elements of the set should be. So before anything's built, they'll pre-visualize these kinds of elements. Storyboards, as Mosquito says in the Telegram room. The comic books that make the movie, he calls it. That's exactly what a storyboard is. It's the comic book of the movie. So one of the things I like to help folks with, I believe that one of the ways you become a better photographer is to not just snap photos of pretty things, the pray and spray kind of methodology, the shotgun method. Take a picture of everything and pictures will come out. That doesn't work all the time. It works a very low percentage of the time. What works a higher percentage of the time is pre-visualization or even visualizing. A pre-visualization is where I'll sit here. Remember a couple weeks ago, I talked about the waterfall shots that I took at Bridal Veil Falls here in Chilliwack. Well, I pre-visualized that. I literally sat here in my apartment thinking about the kind of shots I wanted to get, mentally imagining the kind of images I wanted to get, and mentally thinking about how do I set my camera up to create those images. That was my pre-visualization. And then when I actually got to the falls, I started my visualization. I didn't go to the falls, and as soon as I saw the falls, start taking pictures. I went to the falls, saw the falls, and stopped. Probably spent 2 minutes standing in one spot. Then I walked over there and stood in there for 2 or 3 minutes. Then I walked further up the hill. Then I walked over. Then I crossed the stream. Then I climbed some rocks. I went around a tree. I probably spent a good 30 minutes wandering around the falls before I ever took a picture. I was visualizing the falls. I was looking for elements that I wanted to include in my photography. I was imagining the image in my head. I would literally stand there with my eyes closed, listening to the waterfall, and visualizing the kind of images I wanted to get from this spot. And if you saw my pictures, I was probably in 5 or 6 different spots to take pictures. So at each one of these spots, I would stop and visualize what I wanted my image to be. So I worked from the end backwards, or from the end to the beginning. In other words, I saw the image I wanted to get, and then I worked backwards, both creatively and technically, to try to get the camera to take that image. And what I mean by that is I knew I wanted to have a certain way of the water flowing, that silky waterfall look. So I knew that to get that look, I had to do certain things with the camera. I knew I had to change my aperture. I had to change my shutter speed. I had to change my ISO. So working backwards, I knew how to make those changes to the camera. And this is all, again, before I've even set the camera up to take pictures. It's one of those things that you do instead of just jumping into a scene and jumping into a location and just start snapping photos off randomly in the hopes that you get something. You got to train yourself. You have to know your camera. This is something I tell you guys all the time. Learn, focus, practice. You've got to know how your camera works to learn your camera. So you have to know what your camera can and can't do. You have to focus on the thing that you want to do. I was focusing on creating this waterfall shot. Then you got to practice. Here in Vancouver, every July and August, we have salsa dancing at Robson Square. For those of you who are familiar with Vancouver, you know where Robson Square is. And they have free salsa dancing on Sunday afternoons. And it's great. I got the proverbial 2 left feet and can't dance to save my life. But I love going down to Robson Square to take pictures because you get some great portrait shots. You get pictures of people's faces, and usually it's July and August, so it's hot, sweaty salsa dancers. And you get a lot of really neat motion and movement. And what I do when I go down there is I'll stand on the rail and just look for interesting couples, interesting dancers, attractive dancers, handsome, pretty dancers. And I'll watch them for a while. And try not to do it in a creepy kind of way, but I'll watch them for a while to sort of get a sense of how they move and what they're liable to do. When things are moving and you want to shoot them, you have to shoot like the old Wayne Gretzky line. You have to be where the puck's going to be. What's that line? Shoot the puck where it's going to. You know what I'm talking about. But you have to visualize where they're going to be in the next instant. You can't take a picture of where they are now. You have to imagine where they're going to be in a second from now, where they're going to move, when they're going to spin, when they're going to duck their head or lift a leg. So what I did was I watched these couples, and I picked out 1 or 2 of the couples that I wanted to photograph, and I watched them and sort of started to study their movements. And one of the things I did was that there was this couple at I think it was last year or maybe even the year before. And I pre-visualized this shot. I saw this very handsome couple. She was gorgeous, and he was very, very attractive. I loved his hat. One of the great things about salsa dancing, at least here, Macman, skate to where the puck is going to be. Thank you. I knew it was something like that. One of the things I loved about salsa dancing is the man was usually standing still, and the woman was doing a lot of the motion. So I got these great shots of the man in focus and the woman kind of blurry because she was moving. So I saw this shot. I visualized this shot before I ever took this shot. I knew what kind of camera settings I would need to have. I knew that I'd need to slow the shutter down a little bit. I knew that she was going to be spinning in this direction because I'd watched them for the past little while. And I knew that her dress and her hair were going to fly up like this. And it was so cool to take this picture, and then when I got home and looked at the computer, I went, I got it. I visualized that shot in my head. I manipulated the camera to capture the image the way I wanted to, and then I took the picture. So there's a lot of work before you take these kinds of images that you have to go through to visualize the action before it actually happens. I've got some other shots here of things that I visualized beforehand. And this one looks like it's all blurry, but I wanted it to be blurry. So I knew, this is something, for example, if you're shooting on auto, you can't create this image because auto would not allow you to create this blur. There was so much movement in this shot that I thought it'd be kind of cool to slow my shutter speed down. And I think my shutter speed on this one, I can actually tell you guys. One of the great things about Flickr is you can go in and find out. So I had it at f8, so I wanted everything in focus. This was a quarter-second shot with no flash. So that's how much movement there was in only a quarter second. You think a quarter of a second is really fast, but it actually is fairly slow. But I got this really cool image of motion. And again, this was the kind of image I saw ahead of time. I saw all these people moving around. I thought, how do I get this image that's in my head and capture it in the camera? Another shot that I saw ahead of time, and this is a different shot in that there's no motion in this, but this was a way of capturing the light. I saw this light on the ground, and I saw it on people's backs and arms. And so what I did was I focused on the spot and waited for someone to move into the light. And so I got this really, really neat shot of this beautiful woman with the light bouncing off of the ground and up onto her face. Now, there's no motion in the shot. She wasn't dancing. She was dancing, but she had stopped at that moment in time. But I had to wait on this shot. I had it visualized in my head, but I had to wait for it to happen. I had to be patient, think about the shot, get the camera ready, and then wait for someone to move into my image as opposed to capturing the image right there on the spot. Another shot of the couple from the first shot, and this was me getting a different angle on them. This was me, when I saw the first shot, I thought, I wonder what that shot's going to look like if I could get up higher. And so there was I think it was like an electrical box. And I just jumped up on the electrical box and shot down on top of them. And I love her dress filling up the lower half of the frame and her hair filling up the middle of the frame. And again, I saw the shot before it happened, and I visualized how I could capture it and then set my camera up in order to be able to get the image the way I wanted it to. This was a funny shot, and I saw this shot happening too. There was I'll show you. There was these two very pretty ladies, and they were Norwegian. They were Scandinavian, Norwegian or Swedish or Finnish. I spoke to them afterwards, and they were having a good time dancing. And this much shorter Asian guy came up to one of the ladies and asked if she wanted to dance. And the thing about this Robson Square dancing thing is it's very much like a high school prom. You know, you can go there with a partner, but a lot of folks don't go with any partners. And they'll just dance with whoever asks them to dance. So it's kind of interesting that way. So you'll see different couples dance, or different people dancing with different other people. The couple I showed before, they stayed with each other the entire time. But other folks will just wander around and dance with different people. And so this guy was 6 inches shorter than she was. And I thought, well, salsa has spins. And what's going to happen when he tries to spin her? So I got the camera ready for the spin. I knew what was going to happen. I knew that they were going to spin each other at some point. And so I had the camera ready to shoot the spin when he tried it. And they had a blast. They looked like they were having a great time. So you can see in the image that, again, everything's in focus. At least they're in focus. There's no blur. There's just this wonderful smiling face of her as she's trying to get spun by this guy. Really, really fun thing to do. Your photography, I promise, will get better if you imagine the shots before they happen. Rather than just sort of taking pictures of everything you see, stop when you get to a scene. Walk around a scene. Look at a scene from different angles, both high and low, but also around them. Look for the light. Look for where the light's coming from, where the light's going to be coming from. Study the scene first. And the thing is, it sounds like this would take a long time, but with practice, it becomes very automatic. Trust me, with practice now, I can walk into a scene, a place, an area, and inside 10, 15 seconds know where I can get a good shot. So try that next time you go out shooting. Rather than just going out and shooting everything you see, go out with a plan in mind a focus, pre-visualize it. Think about it ahead of time. What kind of image do you want to capture? And then when you get to the scene, visualize the image in your head before you snap your photo. Give that a try next time. If you do, please send me a photo. Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. Tell me a little story of your own personal pre-visualizations of the images that you capture. Got a great email from Stefan Bertson. I don't know if you guys remember, but Stefan was from Sweden, and he and his girlfriend and his daughter were coming here to Vancouver to get married. And he sent me an email. He said, thought I'd just get back to you after our trip to Canada. We had a wonderful time. It was awesome. Really awesome. Had so much fun. Canada is a very easy country to get to know and easy to relax. A lot of friendly people and easy to talk to. He said, for example, when we were in Merritt, I was taking pictures through the fence at a sawmill. Great fun machinery and a lot of odd buildings. Suddenly this truck pulls up, and he says he's the manager. Shit! But he's smiling and asks if I want to go inside with him so he can give me a tour and get a closer look. Things like that made you smile and made us enjoy the days. We did a lot of different things, and we had my wife's family there. It was easy to get around and see cool stuff. That 5A road you talked about was really nice. We drove that road. It was very windy, big waves in the lakes. But thanks to that, there were lots of surfers out in the lake with big parachutes. Got some nice pictures. Now, he attached his wedding photo, and he said I could use it for a critique later on. So we'll use that for a critique shot later on. But, Stefan, I'm so glad that you and your now bride and your daughter had such a great time here in Vancouver. It's real important to us that folks have fun in Canada. So I'm glad you guys did. Question from Tim. Is there a way to transfer photos from the iPhone to the Mac? Yeah, actually, it's really easy. There are several different ways of doing it. You can use a third party. You can use iCloud. You can use Dropbox. You can use any number of services that will post your photos somewhere else, and you can grab them and bring them on your Mac. But the easiest thing to do is use an app that people don't even know is on their Macintosh called Image Capture. Image Capture, you plug your iPhone in, you open up Image Capture, you select all the photos, and then you tell Image Capture to dump them onto your hard drive, onto a folder on your Macintosh. It's really easy. So give that a shot next time you want to move stuff around. Image Capture, it's called. I have to read these questions ahead of time to make sure I'm understanding them. Linda says, why should one buy a camera when I have a good camera on my iPhone? That's a fair question. That's a good question. The iPhone, as I tell everybody, is a great camera for a phone. You have to keep in mind the iPhone is a phone before it's a camera. It has a lot of good features, but it has some physical limitations. One of which is, as I've said many times in the show, we, as photographers, you're capturing light. You never take pictures of dark, you take pictures of light. So what happens is you gather light through a lens onto a sensor. And then that light gets translated into a digital format that you can then look at on your iPhone or on your desktop, whatever it might be. Well, look at the iPhone. Look how tiny that light gathering thing is. It's this little itty bitty bitty tiny opening. That's not going to grab a whole lot of light. And the sensor on the iPhone is equally as tiny. So you have a small light opening coupled with a small sensor. So you're not going to get great photos through a range of things. There's this thing called, I'm trying to figure a way to say it correctly, but the range of colors and light and shadow that your iPhone can get is going to be smaller than a, say, DSLR with a bigger sensor and bigger lenses. That's the nature of physics. There's no way around it. You can't change that. You can take perfectly good photos with the iPhone. Go to iPhoneography.awards.com. You'll see some amazing photographs. And if you like the photos you're taking with your iPhone, if you don't find yourself wishing for better low light capability, better zoom, more capabilities of your phone, of your photography, stick with the iPhone. I would never tell anyone, oh, you must buy a DSLR. DSLRs allow you to be more creative in certain ways, but you sure as hell can be awfully creative with an iPhone. I've got 200 different iOS camera apps. I can be as creative as hell with my iPhone. Now, I can't zoom with the iPhone. It takes crappy low light shots. It's not very good for high-speed photography. So within those limitations, if I stick within the box that the iPhone is good at, I'll take good photos. But when I want to get more creative, when I want to take high-speed or low-speed shutter stuff, or I want to shoot at night, or I want to do other creative things, I'll always reach for my DSLR. But if you're happy with the photos the way they are, good on you. Don't worry about what anyone says, what kind of camera you should or shouldn't use. Folks are asking, what's the most popular digital camera to buy? Right now, the most popular digital camera is the Canon Rebel line. Is it the best? It's a good beginner camera. If you're a beginner, you can't go wrong with a Canon Rebel. I'm a Nikon guy, but the Canon Rebel is the most popular DSLR out there, and you're not going to go too far wrong with a Canon. Is a 2-megapixel camera considered to be good? No, it's not. A 2-megapixel camera is not going to be very good image quality. It's not going to be very good cropping. It's not going to be very good in any way, shape, or form. It might be cheap, but it's generally wouldn't be considered to be a very good camera. I'm going to assume a 2-megapixel camera is probably at least 7 to 8 years old. So its technology is very old. Its sensor is very old. It's everything about it's going to be very old. And you're not going to get the images you think you're going to get out of a 2-megapixel camera, no matter what the price is going to be. Any other questions? Let me just go to my mail. I don't see any other mail. No, not. Folks, that's it for tonight's show. I want to say thanks, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining us here on tonight's show. And thanks to you guys for being tuned in live, especially the live audience. The live audience are my favorite. I'm not going to lie. I like you guys best. But also thanks to you folks for being tuned in to the archive. As always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!